The floor beneath Emma's knees was cold and unforgiving, just like the marble eyes of the vampires who stepped over her without acknowledgement, their pale feet gliding past her scrub brush as though she were nothing more than another piece of furniture in their ancient manor. She'd been working in the Drakenmoor estate for 3 months now, ever since her mother's medical bills had piled so high that Emma had no choice but to take the only job available to someone like her, a human servant in a vampire household. The pay was exceptional, which was the only reason she stayed, enduring the sneers and cold indifference of Lord Phelan Drakenmoor's extended family. They treated her worse than dirt, these pale immortals with their white hair and porcelain skin, their movements too fluid to be natural, their beauty too perfect to be entirely comfortable. Emma pushed a strand of her brown hair behind her ear, sweat beading on her forehead despite the perpetual chill of the manor. Her knees ached, and her lower back screamed in protest as she leaned forward to scrub at a particularly stubborn stain. She was acutely aware of her body, the way her thighs pressed together, the way her stomach folded as she bent, the way her uniform stretched across her frame. The vampires made sure she was aware. Their comments, though infrequent, were sharp as daggers. "How unfortunate that humans come in such varied shapes," Lady Seraphine had remarked just yesterday, her crimson eyes sliding over Emma with undisguised distaste. "In my day, servants had the decency to be decorative." Emma had said nothing. Just as she always said nothing. She needed this job. Her mother needed her treatments. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. The sound of footsteps, real footsteps, not the ghostly glide of vampire movement, echoed through the hall. Emma's heart quickened. She knew those footsteps. Lord Phelan Drakenmoor himself, the vampire king of the Eastern Territories, was approaching. Unlike his relatives, he actually made sound when he walked, as though he chose to announce his presence rather than sneak through his own home. Emma kept her head down, scrubbing harder, hoping to become invisible. She'd only seen Lord Drakenmoor a handful of times, always from a distance. He was terrifying in his beauty, tall and broad-shouldered, with white hair that fell past his shoulders, and eyes like frozen silver. Where other vampires were merely beautiful, he was magnificent, commanding, radiating power that made the air itself seem to bow in his presence. The footsteps stopped. Emma's hands stilled on the brush. "What is your name?" His voice was deep, resonant, with an accent that suggested centuries of life. Emma's throat went dry. She lifted her head slowly, forcing herself to meet those silver eyes. It was like looking into a winter storm. "Emma, my lord," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Emma Preston." He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. He wore all black, a fitted shirt and trousers that suggested modern sensibility with an old-world elegance. His white hair was pulled back partially, revealing the sharp angles of his face. "How long have you been working in my household, Emma Preston?" 3 months, my lord." "And in those 3 months, have you been treated well?" The question caught her off guard. Emma's mind raced. What was the right answer? The truth could get her fired, or worse, if his family decided she was a troublemaker. But lying to a vampire seemed equally dangerous. They could sense deception, or so the rumor said. "I have been treated as expected, my lord," she said carefully. Something flickered in those silver eyes. "As expected," he repeated softly. "That is not what I asked." Before Emma could formulate a response, Lady Seraphine's voice drifted from the nearby sitting room. "Phelan, darling, why are you wasting time with the help? We have important matters to discuss regarding the council meeting." Lord Drakenmoor's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He extended his hand to Emma. "Stand." Emma stared at his hand, so pale it seemed to glow in the dim light as though it were a snake that might strike. Slowly, she set down her brush and placed her wet, reddened hand in his. His skin was cool, but not cold, his grip firm as he pulled her to her feet with effortless strength. Emma stumbled slightly, unused to being helped up, and his other hand steadied her at the elbow. "Come with me," he said, his tone brooking no argument. Emma's pulse hammered in her ears as Lord Drakenmoor led her through the corridors of the manor, still holding her hand. They passed portraits of stern-faced vampires, their painted eyes seeming to follow Emma's every move. They passed sitting rooms where clusters of Lord Drakenmoor's relatives paused in their conversations to stare. Emma could feel their gazes like ice water down her spine. They entered a grand dining hall where a long table was set for the evening meal. At least 20 vampires were already seated, all with the same pale skin and white hair, all radiating that same otherworldly beauty. The conversations died the moment Lord Drakenmoor entered with Emma in tow. "Phelan," Lord Corvus, the king's uncle, said slowly, "what is the meaning of this?" Lord Drakenmoor guided Emma to the seat directly to his right at the head of the table. "Sit," he told her, pulling out the chair. Emma's legs felt like water. "My lord, I shouldn't—" "Sit." His voice was gentle but absolute. She sat. The chair was more comfortable than anything she'd ever sat on, upholstered in velvet that seemed to embrace her. Lord Drakenmoor took his seat at the head of the table, his presence filling the room like a physical force. The silence was deafening. Lady Seraphine was the first to speak, her voice dripping with venom. "Nephew, have you lost your senses? You've seated a servant, a human servant, at our family table." "I have seated a member of my household at my table in my home," Lord Drakenmoor replied calmly. "Is there a problem, Aunt?" "She's human," Lord Corvus spat. "And look at her. She's not even—" "Finish that sentence, uncle, and you will find yourself unwelcome in this house." The threat hung in the air like a blade. Emma wanted to sink through the floor. Every pair of eyes was on her, assessing, judging, finding her wanting. She could feel her size acutely, the way she filled the chair, the way her body pressed against the armrests. She wanted to apologize, to run, to disappear. A servant, a vampire servant, Emma noted with surprise, appeared at her elbow with a plate of food. Real food, not blood. Roasted chicken, vegetables, bread that smelled like heaven. Emma's stomach growled traitorously loud in the silence. "Eat," Lord Drakenmoor said, and it was a command, not a suggestion. Emma picked up her fork with shaking hands. The first bite was the most humiliating moment of her life, every eye watching as she chewed and swallowed. But the second bite was easier, and by the third, Lord Drakenmoor had turned to Lord Corvus and begun discussing council politics, his voice steady and authoritative, as though nothing unusual had happened at all. The meal progressed in a haze of unreality. Emma ate in silence while the vampires around her debated territories and blood rights and ancient treaties. Lord Drakenmoor included her in none of the conversation, but his presence beside her felt like a shield, his power radiating outward in waves that kept the others' hostility at bay. When dessert arrived, a chocolate tort that made Emma's mouth water, Lady Seraphine could contain herself no longer. "This is absurd, Phelan. You make a mockery of our family by elevating this creature to our level." Lord Drakenmoor set down his wineglass with deliberate care. When he spoke, his voice was silk over steel. "Let me be clear, so there is no misunderstanding. Emma Preston is under my personal protection. Anyone who treats her with disrespect treats me with disrespect. Anyone who harms her, physically or otherwise, will answer to me personally. Am I understood?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Several of the younger vampires actually flinched. Lady Seraphine's face went rigid with fury, but she inclined her head stiffly. "Of course, my lord," she said, the title emphasized with barely concealed contempt. Emma's heart was racing so fast she thought it might burst from her chest. Why was he doing this? What could he possibly gain from protecting her? She was nobody, nothing, just a desperate woman trying to pay her mother's medical bills. The rest of the meal passed in tense silence. When it finally ended, Lord Drakenmoor stood and offered Emma his hand once more. "Walk with me." Emma took his hand and allowed him to lead her from the dining hall, feeling every judgmental gaze burning into her back. They walked through the manor in silence, past rooms she'd only ever seen while scrubbing floors or dusting furniture. Finally, they emerged onto a terrace that overlooked the estate's sprawling gardens. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. Emma realized she hadn't actually been outside, really outside since she'd started working here. She'd been too busy working, too exhausted to do anything but collapse into bed at the end of each day. "I apologize for putting you in that position," Lord Drakenmoor said quietly. "I should have warned you." Emma turned to stare at him. "Why did you do it?" He was silent for a long moment, his profile sharp against the starlight. "I have been away for several weeks, attending to matters in the capital. When I returned yesterday, I began to notice things. The way my family speaks to the human staff, the way they treat those under our protection. I find I am displeased." "I can handle it," Emma said, though she wasn't sure why she was reassuring him. "I've dealt with worse." those silver eyes fixed on her, and Emma felt pinned in place. You shouldn't have to handle it. You work for me. You are owed respect. I'm nobody, Emma heard herself say. I'm just a human, a fat human at that. Your family isn't wrong to look down on me. The words hung between them, and Emma immediately wanted to take them back. She'd never said anything like that out loud before, never admitted the thoughts that circled her mind in the dark hours before dawn. Lord Drakenmoor moved closer, and Emma's breath caught. He reached out slowly, giving her time to step away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was gentle, reverent almost. My family, he said softly, has grown cruel in their immortality. They have forgotten what it means to struggle, to sacrifice, to work, until your hands bleed for something you love. You are worth 100 of them, Emma Preston. And I find... He paused, something almost vulnerable crossing his features. I find you beautiful. Emma's eyes burned with sudden tears. Don't mock me. I don't. His hand cupped her cheek, cool and steady. I am Phelan Drakenmoor, Vampire King of the Eastern Territories. I have lived for 600 years, and in all that time, I have rarely spoken words I do not mean. You are beautiful, Emma. Your courage, your strength, your resilience, and yes, your body, every curve and softness of it. Do you know how rare it is to find real beauty in a world of perfect, unchanging faces? A tear slipped down Emma's cheek. Lord Drakenmoor Phelan caught it with his thumb. Why are you being kind to me? Emma whispered. Because you deserve kindness, and because I find I cannot bear to watch you scrub floors another day. Emma let out a watery laugh. What else would I do? I need this job. My mother... I know, Phelan said gently. I had my assistant pull your employment file. Your mother has stage 4 cancer. The treatments are expensive. You send home 90% of your wages. He paused. How much do you need? Emma pulled away from his touch, wrapping her arms around herself. I can't take charity from you. It wouldn't be charity. I have a proposal. Phelan leaned against the terrace railing, his posture relaxed, giving her space. I need someone I can trust. Someone who isn't part of the vampire power structure. Who doesn't have ulterior motives or family connections to exploit. Someone honest and hardworking. Be my personal assistant. Help me manage my household, accompany me to council meetings, be my eyes and ears. The pay would be triple what you make now, and the work would be far more suitable than scrubbing floors. Emma's mind reeled. Why me? Because in 3 months, you never once complained. Because you work harder than anyone else in my employ. Because when I asked if you'd been treated well, you tried to protect my family's reputation rather than throw them to the wolves. Because... He smiled, and it transformed his face from intimidating to devastating. Because I find I very much want you near me, Emma Preston. Emma's heart did something complicated in her chest. I don't understand any of this. Neither do I, Phelan admitted. I saw you on your knees today, and something in me revolted at the sight. You should never be on your knees to anyone. Certainly not to the parasites who call themselves my family. They're vampires, Emma said. Isn't being parasitic kind of the point? Phelan laughed, a genuine sound of delight. Sharp tongue, I like that. Will you accept my offer? Emma thought of her mother, of the bills that multiplied like weeds, of the crushing weight of exhaustion that had become her constant companion. She thought of Lady Seraphine's cruel eyes, of scrubbing floors until her hands bled, of being invisible and worthless. She thought of Phelan's hand on her cheek, of his words, "You are beautiful spoken like truth, like gospel." Yes, she whispered, I'll accept. The smile that spread across Phelan's face was like sunrise breaking over winter mountains. Good. Then let's begin immediately. First order of business. You're moving out of the servants' quarters into the guest wing. Second, we'll need to get you a proper wardrobe. Third, tomorrow evening, you'll accompany me to a council meeting. Tomorrow, Emma squeaked. I don't know anything about vampire politics. You'll learn, Phelan said confidently. And Emma, stop thinking of yourself as lesser. You are under my protection now. That makes you one of the most powerful humans in this territory. Emma wasn't sure if that was reassuring or terrifying. Probably both. The next few days passed in a whirlwind. Emma was moved into a guest suite that was larger than the apartment she'd shared with her mother before the hospital bills started. She had her own bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in, a bedroom with a 4-poster bed draped in silk, and a sitting room with shelves full of books. It was like living in a dream, or a nightmare, depending on the moment. Phelan's family made their displeasure known at every opportunity. Lady Seraphine accidentally spilled wine on Emma's new dress. Lord Corvus made pointed comments about humans who didn't know their place. The younger vampires whispered and snickered whenever Emma passed, but Phelan was always there, his presence a wall between Emma and their cruelty. He was patient as he taught her about vampire society, explaining the complex web of alliances and blood oaths that held their world together. He was gentle when she made mistakes, reassuring when she doubted herself. And he was. Emma was slowly realizing, completely genuine in his attraction to her. She caught him watching her sometimes, his silver eyes following her movements with an intensity that made her skin warm. When he touched her, a hand on her back to guide her through a doorway, fingers brushing as he handed her documents, there was something electric in the contact, something that made Emma's breath catch. It terrified her. Emma had never been the object of anyone's desire. She had spent her whole life being invisible, undesirable, the fat girl that boys looked through rather than at. The idea that someone like Phelan, beautiful, powerful, immortal, could want her felt like a cosmic joke. The night of the council meeting arrived too quickly. Emma, dressed in the gown Phelan had selected for her deep emerald silk that draped over her curves in a way that actually made her feel beautiful. When she emerged from her room, Phelan was waiting in the hallway. His eyes widened, then darkened. "Emma," he breathed, "you're stunning." Emma flushed. "It's the dress. It's you." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" The council met in a building that looked like a modern office complex from the outside, but revealed itself to be something far older once you passed through its doors. The walls were stone, the ceilings vaulted, the decor a mixture of ancient and contemporary that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. Vampires filled the great hall, hundreds of them, all pale and beautiful and terrifying. Emma felt their eyes on her immediately, felt the weight of their curiosity and disdain. She wanted to turn and run, but Phelan's hand covered hers where it rested on his arm. "Stay close to me," he murmured. You're safe." The meeting was conducted in a mixture of English and languages Emma didn't recognize, probably ancient vampire tongues. She did her best to follow along, taking notes on the tablet Phelan had given her, trying to look competent and professional. She was so focused on appearing capable that she didn't notice Lord Corvus approaching until he was standing directly in front of her. "So this is your new pet, nephew," he said, his voice carrying across the hall. Several conversations stopped. "Tell me, does she do tricks?" Emma's face burned, but before she could respond, Phelan was on his feet. He moved too fast for Emma to track, and suddenly he had Lord Corvus by the throat, lifted off the ground, his silver eyes blazing with fury. "I warned you," Phelan said, his voice deadly quiet. "I told you what would happen if you disrespected her." Lord Corvus clawed at Phelan's hand, his face turning purple. The entire council had gone silent, watching. "Phelan," Emma said softly, "please, he's not worth it." Phelan's eyes met hers across the space between them. For a moment, Emma thought he wouldn't listen, thought she'd watch him kill his own uncle right there in the council hall. Then slowly, he lowered Lord Corvus to the ground and released him. "Leave," Phelan ordered. "You are no longer welcome in my territory." Lord Corvus staggered back, gasping, his hand at his throat. "You would exile your own blood for a human?" "I would exile anyone who fails to show basic decency and respect. Go. If you're still in the Eastern Territories by dawn, I will consider it an act of war." The threat hung in the air. Lord Corvus looked around the council hall, perhaps seeking support, but found only blank faces and averted eyes. Finally, he turned and fled, his dignity in tatters. Phelan returned to his seat beside Emma, his hand finding hers beneath the table. His skin was still cool, but Emma could feel the tension thrumming through him. "Thank you," she whispered. "I meant what I said," Phelan replied, his eyes still tracking the door his uncle had disappeared through. "No one treats you that way. No one." The meeting continued, but Emma couldn't focus. Her mind kept replaying the moment Phelan had defended her, the way he'd moved without hesitation, the fury in his eyes. No one had ever protected her like that. No one had ever thought she was worth protecting. When the meeting finally ended, Phelan guided Emma out of the hall, his hand at the small of her back. They were almost to his car when a voice called out behind them. "Lord Drakenmoor." A moment. Emma turned to see a female vampire approaching, tall and willowy, with white hair braided down her back and eyes like amber. She was breathtaking, and Emma felt her insecurity rise like a tide. "Lady Isolde," Phelan said neutrally, "what can I do for you?" Lady Isolde's eyes slid to Emma, assessing. Unlike Lord Corvus, there was no malice in her gaze, only curiosity. I wanted to meet your companion. The entire council is buzzing about her. Emma Preston, Phelan said, may I introduce Lady Isolde Morgenthau, leader of the Western Territories. Emma inclined her head, trying to remember the protocols Phelan had taught her. My lady. Just Isolde, please. Isolde smiled, and it seemed genuine. I must say, Lord Drakenmoor, I approve. It's about time someone shook up the old guard. They've grown complacent in their cruelty. Is that why you voted in my favor tonight? Phelan asked. That, and because your proposal actually made sense. Blood farms are inhumane. It's time we found a more ethical way to sustain ourselves. Isolde's attention returned to Emma. I hope you know what you've gotten yourself into, Miss Preston. Being attached to the Vampire King is no small thing. There will be those who try to use you to get to him. I can handle it, Emma said with more confidence than she felt. Isolde's smile widened. I believe you can. Take care of him, won't you? Phelan has a tendency to take on the world's problems and forget to take care of himself. Phelan made a sound somewhere between amusement and exasperation. I'm standing right here, Isolde. I know. That's why I'm speaking to Miss Preston instead of you. You never listen to advice. Isolde inclined her head gracefully. Until next month's council meeting, then. I look forward to seeing you both. She glided away, leaving Emma feeling slightly less terrified of the vampire world. If there were vampires like Isolde, kind, reasonable, progressive, then maybe there was hope. The drive back to the manor was quiet. Emma stared out the window at the city passing by, still processing everything that had happened. Phelan had defended her. He'd exiled his own uncle for insulting her. It still didn't feel real. You're thinking very loudly, Phelan observed, a hint of amusement in his voice. I'm trying to understand why you're doing all this, Emma admitted. It doesn't make sense. You could have anyone. Why me? Phelan was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost vulnerable. 600 years is a long time to live, Emma. After the first century, faces start to blur together. Everyone becomes the same beautiful, immortal, unchanging. Perfect faces with nothing behind them. It becomes empty. He paused. Then I saw you, on your knees, exhausted and in pain, and you looked up at me with eyes that held so much life, so much fire. You were real in a way I'd forgotten things could be real, and I found I couldn't look away. Emma's throat tightened. I'm not special. You are to me. Phelan pulled the car over to the side of the road, turning to face her fully. Emma, I know this is fast. I know you have every reason to doubt my intentions, but I need you to understand something. I am not kind. I am not gentle. I have done terrible things in my long life, things that would horrify you. But when I look at you, I want to be better. I want to be worthy of the way you look at me, like I'm something more than a monster. You're not a monster, Emma whispered. I could be, I have been, but with you... He reached out, his hand hovering near her face, waiting for permission. Emma leaned into his touch, and his palm cupped her cheek with infinite gentleness. With you, I remember what it means to be something other than death and power and endless hunger. Emma's heart was hammering against her ribs. Phelan, I'm falling for you, Emma Preston. I'm not sure I can stop, even if I wanted to, and I don't want to. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Tell me I'm not alone in this. Tell me you feel even a fraction of what I feel. Emma closed her eyes, overwhelmed. A month ago, she'd been scrubbing floors, invisible and exhausted. Now she was sitting in a car with the Vampire King, who was looking at her like she hung the moon and stars. It was too much, too fast, too impossible, but it was also real. She could feel it in the cool touch of his hand, see it in the vulnerability in his ancient eyes. Phelan Drakenmoor, who could have anyone or anything, wanted her. I'm terrified, Emma admitted. I'm terrified that this is a dream, and I'll wake up back in the servants' quarters. I'm terrified that you'll realize I'm just ordinary and boring and not worth all this trouble. I'm terrified that I'm not enough. Emma. Phelan's other hand came up to frame her face. You are more than enough. You are everything. Then he was kissing her, gentle and careful, like she was something precious that might break. Emma's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and the kiss deepened. Phelan tasted like winter and wine, and his lips were soft despite the coolness. Emma felt herself melting into him, all her fear and insecurity dissolving in the face of his certainty. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard while Emma was breathing hard, Phelan probably didn't need to breathe at all. Emma found herself smiling. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I'm falling too. God help me, but I'm falling for you." The smile that broke across Phelan's face was radiant. He kissed her again, then her forehead, then her nose, like he couldn't help himself. "Emma Preston, you have made me happier than I've been in centuries." "I haven't done anything," Emma protested. "You exist. You're here. That's everything." They sat there on the side of the road for a long time, wrapped up in each other, the rest of the world fading away. Emma had never felt so safe, so wanted, so completely seen. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. Finally, reluctantly, Phelan pulled back. "We should get home. You need rest, and I have things to arrange." "What things?" "Things to make sure you and your mother are taken care of. Things to ensure my family understands that you are untouchable. Things to prepare for the fact that courting you is going to cause political upheaval, the likes of which the vampire world hasn't seen in centuries." He grinned. "I'm rather looking forward to it." Emma laughed despite herself. "You're insane." "Probably. 600 years will do that to a person." He started the car again, pulling back onto the road. "But I'm your particular brand of insane now, so you're stuck with me." "I think I can live with that." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. Phelan arranged for the best oncologist in the country to take over Emma's mother's care, and miraculously, the new treatment started working. The bills that had been crushing Emma disappeared overnight, paid in full by an anonymous benefactor that everyone knew was Phelan. Emma's role in Phelan's household evolved rapidly. She was no longer just his assistant, but his constant companion by his side at council meetings, diplomatic dinners, and territorial negotiations. The vampire world watched their relationship with a mixture of fascination and horror. A human and a vampire king, it was unprecedented, scandalous, and exactly the kind of story that spread like wildfire. Some vampires were outraged. There were protests outside the manor, calls for Phelan to step down, even whispers of assassination attempts. But Phelan faced it all with calm determination, Emma at his side, and slowly things began to change. Other vampires started bringing human companions to council meetings. Isolde announced a new treaty protecting human rights within vampire territories. The old guard, led by vampires like Lady Seraphine, fumed and schemed, but their power was waning. Emma found herself at the center of a revolution she'd never asked for. But as Phelan pointed out, sometimes the most important changes came from unexpected places. "You're giving them hope," he told her one night as they stood together on the terrace, the same place where he'd first told her she was beautiful. "Human servants see you and realize they don't have to accept abuse. Progressive vampires see you and realize that change is possible. You're more powerful than you know, Emma." "I'm just being myself," Emma protested. "Exactly." Phelan pulled her into his arms, his chin resting on top of her head. "That's all you ever need to be." Emma had grown comfortable in his embrace, no longer flinching at the coolness of his skin or the inhuman strength in his arms. She trusted him completely, loved him with an intensity that sometimes took her breath away. But there was one thing they still needed to address. "Phelan," Emma said carefully, "we need to talk about the future." She felt him tense slightly. "What about it?" "I'm human. I'm going to age. I'm going to die. And you," she pulled back to look up at him, "you're immortal. How is this going to work?" Phelan was silent for a long moment, his silver eyes searching hers. "There is a way," he said finally, "to make you like me, to turn you. But Emma, I would never do that without your full consent. Becoming a vampire it changes everything. Your relationship with food, with sunlight, with your own humanity. It's not a decision to be made lightly." "What do you want that?" Emma asked. "For me to become a vampire?" "I want you to be happy," Phelan said firmly. "If that means living your natural human lifespan and letting me treasure every moment we have, then that's what we'll do. If it means turning you so we can have centuries together, then I would welcome that too. But it has to be your choice, Emma. Not mine. Not anyone else's. Yours." Emma's eyes burned with tears. "What if I'm not sure?" "Then we wait until you are sure. We have time, love. You're young and healthy. We don't need to make this decision tonight or next month or even next year. When you're ready, we'll talk about it again." Emma buried her face in his chest, overwhelmed by love for this vampire king who could have demanded anything, but instead gave her the freedom to choose. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you so much." "And I love you, Emma Preston, more than I thought possible, more than I knew I was still capable of feeling." He tilted her face up, kissing her softly. "Now and always, whatever you choose." 3 months later, disaster struck. Emma was in the library researching vampire blood laws for an upcoming council vote when the doors burst open. Lady Seraphine strode in, her face twisted with rage, and behind her were a dozen vampires Emma didn't recognize. "There you are, you little parasite," Seraphine hissed. "Did you really think you could steal the king from his own kind without consequences?" Emma's hand went to the panic button Phelan had insisted she carry, but before she could press it, one of the strange vampires was behind her, wrenching her arm behind her back. The device clattered to the floor. "What are you doing?" Emma gasped, pain shooting through her shoulder. Phelan is at the council. Hours away," Seraphine said, smiling coldly. "By the time he returns, you'll be gone. An unfortunate accident. A human who wandered where she shouldn't have. These things happen." Terror flooded Emma's system. She tried to scream, but a hand clamped over her mouth. The vampires were dragging her toward the door, and Emma realized with crystal clarity that she was about to die. Then the door exploded inward. Phelan stood in the doorway, and he was terrifying. His eyes blazed silver fire, his fangs were fully extended, and power rolled off him in waves that made the air crackle. Emma had never seen him like this. This was the Vampire King in all his lethal glory, and it was awesome and terrible to behold. "Release her," Phelan said, his voice echoing with something otherworldly, something ancient and deadly. "Release her now, or I will paint these walls with your blood." The vampire holding Emma let go immediately, stumbling backward. Seraphine tried to run, but Phelan was faster. He had her by the throat before she'd taken 2 steps. "You dared," he whispered, and his voice was more frightening for its softness. "You dared to threaten what is mine. You conspired to kill the woman I love under my own roof." "She's human," Seraphine choked out. "Not worthy of you. I was trying to save you from yourself." "You were trying to save your own power and influence." Phelan's grip tightened. "Emma has more worth in her smallest finger than you possess in your entire miserable existence. And now you will face the consequences of your actions." What happened next was brutal and swift. Phelan stripped Seraphine and her conspirators of their titles, their lands, their positions within vampire society. He exiled them from the Eastern Territories, from the Council, from every place of power and influence they'd ever known. They would be pariahs, outcasts, examples of what happened when you crossed the Vampire King. When it was done, when the last of them had been dragged away by the guards, Phelan turned to Emma. The fury drained from his face, replaced by concern and something deeper fear. "Are you hurt?" His hands ran over her carefully, checking for injuries. "Did they harm you?" "I'm okay," Emma managed, though her voice shook. "You came so fast, I thought you were at the council." "I was. Then I felt—" He paused, struggling for words. "I felt that something was wrong, like a pull in my chest drawing me home. I left immediately, drove like a madman." "Emma, I'm so sorry. I should have anticipated this. I should have protected you better." "You did protect me," Emma said, her hands framing his face. "You saved me. Phelan, you'll always save me. I know that now." He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe, but Emma didn't care. She clung to him just as fiercely, the terror slowly draining away. "I could have lost you," Phelan whispered against her hair. "Emma, I could have lost you, and the thought nearly destroyed me. You didn't lose me. I'm right here." They stood there in the destroyed library, wrapped up in each other, and Emma felt something shift inside her, a decision crystallizing, becoming clear. "Phelan," she said softly, "I want to be turned." He pulled back, his eyes searching hers. "Emma, you're in shock. This isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," Emma interrupted. "I just faced death, and all I could think was that I wanted more time with you. Decades aren't enough. I want centuries. I want forever." She took a shaky breath. "I know it will be hard. I know I'll have to give things up, but I've thought about it, really thought about it, and I'm sure. I want to be with you, Phelan, for as long as we both exist." Phelan closed his eyes, something raw and vulnerable crossing his face. "You would do that? You would give up your humanity for me?" "I'd give up anything for you," Emma said simply. Because you already gave up everything for me. Your family's approval, your reputation, political allies, you sacrificed all of it without hesitation. Let me do the same. Let me choose you the way you chose me. When Phelan opened his eyes, they were wet with tears. Actual tears. Which Emma had thought vampires couldn't cry. Emma Preston, you are the greatest gift I have ever received, and I swear to you I will spend eternity making sure you never regret this choice. I won't regret it, Emma promised. How could I? I'm choosing forever with the man I love. The turning happened a week later in a ceremony attended by Isolde and the few vampires who supported their union. Emma's mother was there too, healthy and thriving thanks to her new treatments, holding Emma's hand until the very last moment. Are you sure, baby? Her mother asked, tears streaming down her face. I'm sure, Mom, Emma said, squeezing her hand. I'll still be me, just a different version of me, and I'll be able to visit you for a long time now, watch you grow old, be there for whatever you need. Her mother smiled through her tears. Then I'm happy for you. You found your person, Emma. That's all I ever wanted for you. The turning itself was both agonizing and transcendent. Phelan's bite was sharp, his venom burning through her veins like liquid fire. Emma screamed, thrashed, felt like she was being torn apart and remade from the inside out. But through it all, Phelan held her, his voice in her ear, grounding her. I'm here, love. I'm right here. You're so strong. Just hold on for me. Emma held on. When she finally opened her eyes again, the world had transformed. Colors were brighter, sounds clearer, scents more complex. She could hear her mother's heartbeat from across the room, could see individual dust motes floating in the air. Everything was sharper, more vivid, more real. And Phelan, standing over her with anxious eyes, was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. Emma? He said softly. How do you feel? Emma sat up, marveling at the ease of movement, the strength flooding her limbs. She looked down at herself, same body, same curves, but now her skin had taken on a pale luminescence. Her hair, when she touched it, felt like silk. I feel... She searched for the right word. Alive, more alive than I've ever felt. She looked up at Phelan, seeing him with new eyes. The way power moved beneath his skin, the ancient strength coiled in his frame. And I feel like I can finally see you, really see you. Phelan's smile was radiant. And I see you, my Emma, my equal, my queen. Emma blinked. Queen? If you'll have me. Phelan took her hand, and Emma realized she could feel his coolness now without the jarring contrast of her human warmth. They matched. Emma Preston, would you do me the honor of standing beside me, not as my assistant or companion, but as my partner in all things, my wife, my queen, my forever? Emma's eyes filled with tears, vampire tears, which apparently were possible, and she launched herself into his arms. Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes. The wedding took place on the terrace where Phelan had first told Emma she was beautiful, under stars that Emma could now see with perfect clarity. Isolde officiated, and Emma's mother stood as her only human attendant, surrounded by vampires who were slowly learning to see humans as equals rather than food or servants. Emma wore a gown of pure white that had been specially designed for her new form, and when Phelan saw her, his face reflected such love and devotion that Emma's heart, which she was pleased to discover, still beat, just slower, swelled with joy. They exchanged vows in front of the assembled vampires, promises of eternity and partnership and love that would outlast centuries. When Phelan kissed her, sealing their union, applause erupted from the gathered crowd. Even some of the old guard, those who had initially opposed their union, had come around. It was hard to argue with the changes that had swept through vampire society in Emma's wake, better treatment of humans, new laws protecting the vulnerable, a shift toward coexistence rather than domination. Emma had changed the vampire world simply by existing, by refusing to accept that she was less than, by demanding respect and love and recognition. And Phelan had changed alongside her, becoming not just a king, but a leader worthy of his power. 5 years later, Emma stood once again on the terrace, Phelan's arms around her waist, watching the sunset over their territory. She still couldn't go out in full daylight. That weakness hadn't changed with her turning. but she could enjoy dusk and dawn, those magical in-between times. "Do you ever regret it?" Phelan asked softly, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Giving up your humanity?" Emma thought about it seriously, as she always did when he asked that question. She thought about the things she'd lost the ability to taste food the way she used to, the warmth of sunlight on her skin, the simple pleasure of a normal human life. But then she thought about what she'd gained. Centuries with the man she loved. The power to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. A purpose that went beyond survival. The ability to change an entire world for the better. "Not even for a second," Emma said firmly, turning in his arms to face him. "I'd make the same choice every time." Phelan smiled, that devastating smile that still made her knees weak even after 5 years of marriage. "I fall more in love with you every day, Emma Drakenmoor. How is that possible?" "Because we are forever," Emma said simply, rising on her toes to kiss him. And forever is a long time to keep falling. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From scrubbing floors on her knees to standing as vampire queen of the Eastern Territories, it seemed impossible, like a fairy tale. But it was real, she was real, and she was exactly where she was meant to be. Down in the city below, Emma could sense the heartbeats of thousands of humans and vampires, living side by side in a peace that was still fragile but growing stronger every day. She and Phelan had work ahead of them, centuries of work to ensure that peace lasted, but they would face it together, now and always. The fat girl who had been invisible was now the most visible woman in the vampire world, and she wore that visibility like armor, using her platform to make sure no one ever had to scrub floors in humiliation again, to make sure every human knew their worth, to make sure the world changed for the better. Emma had learned that true power wasn't in beauty or perfection or meeting society's expectations. True power was in knowing your worth and demanding respect and refusing to be diminished by others' cruelty. True power was in love that transformed not just two people, but an entire world. "Ready to face eternity?" Phelan murmured against her lips. Emma smiled, fierce and confident and utterly unafraid. "With you? Always." And as the stars began to emerge overhead, the Vampire King and his queen stood together on their terrace, two souls bound by love and choice and an unbreakable certainty that they had found exactly what they were meant to find, not just each other, but themselves, reflected in each other's eyes. Forever started now, and Emma couldn't wait to see where it led.